Yeah. So one of our favorite things to do anywhere we go, I don't know if we ever planned this. It's just what we gravitate towards. Go see the highest places so you get a view of like everything, a high bird's eye view. You get a sense of, the routes and what's around you.
Yeah.
And then
And
also
then,
go underground.
yes, to see what has been there in the past
Right.
and where all the bodies are buried.
Literally.
Literally. Welcome to With You Podcast.
Where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
And today we thought we would talk about travel.
Right.
Well, I'm right in between travels.
I mean, we kind of had to.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing lately this last 18 months.
We've gotten to travel a lot recently, but you especially. I feel like we're trying to squeeze everything in between your trips. So we thought, what's the most relevant thing that we're thinking about a lot that's really been, to fit it into our theme of transition and relationships. I think it's really relevant to all of that because usually when you're in some kind of life transition, there's travel involved.
That's right. You have to go places.
And it has a big effect on relationships when you travel with somebody.
That's right. You learn a lot. You become very connected to your strengths and weaknesses.
That's true.
And I think we've experienced a lot of that traveling. So we thought we would talk about traveling tips and mishaps.
Yeah, I mean, if you like to travel, this one's going to be a really good one for you because we have done a lot of it lately and we've collected our best tips.
Yeah, and our most uncomfortable stories.
Exactly. So we've got some travel disasters as well as some recommendations.
So we're hoping it'll be informative and fun or funny. We'll see.
Or cringe.
Or cringe. Probably cringe. So why don't we get started?
Yeah. So, I mean, our number one thing that we tell everybody, we try to convince everybody that everybody should have a passport.
That's right. And those of you that we've talked that don't have one, this is another episode to say, hey, get a passport.
You know who you are.
You know who you are.
So get a passport. We think, world travel, international travel is one of the things that's expanded our perspective so much and that we've really felt is important for our kids too, to experience other cultures, to meet people from all sorts of different places, different languages.
Yeah, and we learn so much from travel about ourselves, like what you think is normal, and then you're in a different culture where they do things differently. It kind of challenges you to think about, oh, why do I do that? And maybe there's other ways to do that, and appreciating the uniqueness.
Right.
But it can be stressful.
Yeah. I mean, it is getting outside of your comfort zone, which is also a thing we think is great for personal growth.
That's right.
So it forces that. But I just think an interesting statistic is how many Americans actually even have a passport, which the great news is that it's been growing exponentially. When we met in 1989 and both were on our own study abroads, there were only 3% of Americans had a passport. I find that really hard to believe.
Well, before I got ready to go on that trip to the United Arab Emirates, I didn't have a passport.
Yeah, I know.
That was part of the process.
Yeah, and I thought that was weird then, but that was
more
more normal.
I was in the 97%.
That's right. You were in the 97th percentile of Americans.
Yeah.
But
and
now
you moved me right into the 3%.
That's right. But it's been growing ever since then, steadily upward. It was already 5% by 1990. In 2008, I think it was 30%. And now of what we're reading is that there's 48%, almost half of Americans have. Some of those are expired or invalid, but they have a passport.
Yeah, and there's some people when asked, they're not sure if they have a passport or not. But
I think you'd know. It's quite a process.
Yeah.
You have to remember to write your application in black ink. There's a lot of
rules.
Yeah, a lot of rules.
And the thing that was fascinating is that asking people, why don't you have a passport? It's like, well, America's big enough to explore. And that's true. There's a lot of space to explore here in the U.S.
It is true. And we fully support that, exploring our own country. There is so much. I mean, there's a lot we haven't covered in the U.S. yet that I'd love to see.
Yeah.
But there's something very different about traveling somewhere where you don't speak the language, where you're the minority, and you learn to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and have to navigate. Like when we lived in Hungary, this isn't passport, but just living of stress sweats of grocery shopping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like not being able to
To
speak the
communicate.
language, to communicate, or the thing that I work with people on is don't let your kids be the translators for you when you're living cross culturally. And that's what we did.
Yeah, you
Ryan did that
do
for
what
us.
you have to do. So, okay, along with having a passport, of course, we have some mishap stories
Oh
because your
boy.
passport, once you have one, it's a very, very
Precious.
valuable document.
Yeah, precious.
It's the kind of thing people store in safes or, somewhere locked up that you
Yeah.
often, where was that safe place?
I keep it on my person when we're
When we travel,
traveling.
that is a tip. Whenever we travel internationally, when we leave the hotel or wherever we're staying, we keep it on our person.
Yeah.
Um,
There's other colleagues of mine. They have the passport card as well,
mhm.
so they lock their book passport in the safe in the hotel or Airbnb, and then keep their
The card,
passport card.
because it would help have the information if you had to go to the embassy and
Correct.
something. Yeah, so that's a tip. Some things that happen when you lose your passport or damage your passport. So I'll go with a less recent story first. Something that happened to friends of mine, and I won't identify them, but they were taking a big international trip to somewhere they'd never gone, a very long trip, and were trying to be very safe with their important money and
Yeah.
passports, and had it in a money belt on their body,
Yep. Under their clothes.
under their clothes where nobody could see it, and
Yep.
it was, close to them. But when they went to an airplane bathroom, they took it off because it was in the way and left it there.
Yes.
And strangely, it was never, they knew they were missing it when they went back to their seat.
Yeah.
And it had been taken by somebody else by the time they went to retrieve it. And it was never
Yeah.
found. So they arrived in a foreign country without their passport or their credit cards, which is really devastating.
Yeah.
And
What-
the person who tells me this story, even though it's terrible and devastating, it just makes you roll with laughter because those disaster stories are only funny after the fact, after you've gone through all the really hard stuff. So
Yeah.
always remember to keep it. If you do keep it on you, don't take it off you.
That's right. And but if you do lose it, you go to the embassy or the consulate,
Yes.
so you can get home.
Yeah, and I think one of our sons actually left one in an airport bathroom.
Yes, on the urinal.
And was very fortunate to have people find it and follow him out.
Yeah, because
to
he
give it.
had walked out of security.
Right. So that could have been worse than it was.
All
Do you want to
right.
tell your most recent mishap with a passport?
No, I do not. But but I will. So strangely enough, I'm not a man of ritual necessarily in terms of daily habits, but I am when I travel. I tend to travel with a suit coat because I'm presenting sometimes, and I keep my passport in my
Because you like the pockets.
breast pocket. Yeah, I like the pocket. It's kind of my purse, and I keep things. It's on me, and I know I feel it by my left breast pocket. And so this time, I decided I'm going to travel casual, and I had pullovers or jumpers that had a zipper in there. Had a wonderful trip. Came home and needed to do clothes,
You
do the
dumped
laundry.
all of your suitcase into the washer.
Yep, and the
without
stuff I was
sorting through the
wearing,
pockets.
just kind of threw it all in the wash. And I laundered my passport in the wash and the dryer.
Yes. I discovered it when I took clothes out of the dryer and felt something large and square
And
in your
squishy.
pocket and no longer firm.
Yes, it was no longer a passport. It looked like it had exploded and vomited paper.
Yeah,
And
that was a
so-
bad moment.
And it
Because you had
was
another trip in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, and everything turned out okay. But
But we had to pay for expedited service to get a new
Yes,
passport.
yes.
So don't wash your passport.
don't put your passports do not like going through the laundry.
No.
Weird. All right, so
So that was a long number one tip, but it's an important one.
it is an important one. So we'll move on to number 2. Pack lightly.
Pack
Or
light is a skill.
It is a skill.
It's one we're still learning, but we're getting better at it.
We are getting better at it. It's surprising.
Yeah, and you learn this one the hard way.
Yeah. Well, do you remember when we went to, we were teaching in Greece
I was thinking about that one.
and the students brought like two full 75-pound suitcases each?
Yeah. So the number one thing about pack light is, so we've gotten better and even lighter than this, but only bring what you can handle yourself.
Yes.
Right? Only bring as much luggage
As you can
as you
carry.
can carry, basically, or roll all at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we traveled with students to Greece for a study abroad program, and I think some of the girls wanted to have a special outfit for every event.
And lots of shoes.
And lots of shoes, which
Yeah.
really were not practical. But they had enormous, astonishingly large suitcases.
Yes.
And we went on a ferry to a Greek island, and they could not manage these like 2 suitcases each going up this little escalator onto a ferry, and we're trying to get locals to help them, and they were laughing at them, and
Yeah, it was bad all
it
the
was
way around.
embarrassing and really not a wise move.
No. And so from that point forward, we're like, how do we travel lightly? And we hadn't done it very well. I mean, you can kind of see now that we've traveled internationally a lot, you see the Americans are the ones with basically their house packed up with them. And we have been trying to travel more like an international person with carry-on. I call it the carry-on conundrum because I need to try to figure out how can I put all my week worth of living in a carry-on.
Well, and we've learned that part the hard way too, because we thought traveling light was just being in one suitcase.
Yeah.
But anytime you check your luggage, you have the potential for it to be lost or not to make a connecting flight.
That's right.
So we took our family on a sort of bucket list trip a few years ago to Scotland with my mother, and
who is part Scottish.
yeah, it was kind of her roots, her Scottish roots. So we were exploring that and going there for a very special Christmas. And I think we just had a late start with our first flight, so we had a very short connection in Germany. And our luggage, none of our luggage made it onto the flight, the connecting flight from Germany to Scotland.
Yes.
And so we arrived, Christmas week in Scotland.
During the pandemic.
In a pandemic, when we had to take a COVID test on arrival at the airport and then stay quarantined until we got positive results.
Not positive results.
Until we got results that were hopefully negative.
Yes, that we could.
Which they were.
Yes, venture
thankfully.
out.
But it was a long wait. It was really, it was rough, but it was, in the end, it was worth it. But the lost luggage was rough.
Yes.
Because there was only one flight a day, I understand, into the Scotland airport, into Edinburgh. And we didn't get our luggage for 4 days.
No, 5 days. And
it came in piece by piece. So you'd think they all come together, but a lot of people were missing their luggage.
Yeah.
So they hired people to just get cars and just grab pieces of luggage and go try to follow the addresses to wherever they were going, which I guess is on your customs form. And so we saw a van arriving, and we were staying in an Airbnb that unfortunately was very difficult for people to find.
It was gorgeous.
It was, but
it
was obscure.
Yes.
And so we saw a van arriving, and we'd been watching for this for days because we're locked inside in the same clothes we had traveled in days ago.
It was, and we were quarantined, so
we couldn't even leave to buy
underwear.
Clothes. It was bad.
It was special. It was special. So,
but anyway, the luggage came in piece by piece. So the first truck that arrived with luggage had one suitcase.
Yes, and
thankfully it was my mother's.
You thought it was going to be Lord of the Flies. Of everybody's like, "Is it mine? Is it mine?" And it was
the next day. 2 pieces came in.
Yes.
So it was rough, and that was, I think, our breaking moment that made us just decide to only bring carry-ons if it was at all possible.
Yeah. Now, what I've learned, though, is there's different size carry-ons.
That's the thing.
It's
in
annoying.
Europe, when we're at a connecting flight in Europe, you look around and the Europeans are pulling these tiny suitcases.
I know. I'm not going to lie. I've made fun of them a couple of times.
We've thought we should have one, and we go to our stores here and they don't sell them in that size.
No. they sell them in a different size, which is U.S. carriers for carry-on. And so here's a pro tip. Get the European size because we've done connecting flights. So you fly U.S. over to,
And
say,
it's
Europe,
fine.
and it's fine. You can put it in the carry-on. And then we get to, I don't know, let's say Poland or Germany. And they look at us and they start getting a little smirk on their face. And it's like, come here. And
They
we have to,
single you out and
yeah.
they say, you can't come on with that giant suitcase. We
Can
say,
it,
this is tiny.
this is carry
No,
on.
it's
And they're
not.
like, does it fit into this little metal thing? And we're like, no. And it has to be 8 kilos.
Kilos.
And
That's not very much.
no. And we're usually overweight. And so then we have to put it checked.
Yeah.
And you worry like you're never going to see it again, like
Yeah.
our Scotland fiasco.
Yeah. It's nice to have it with you. So if at all possible, pack so light that you just have everything in a small carry-on that can fit even under the seat, which is crazy, but you can do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We've gotten better and better at it. So my little mini tips for that, and you probably see it all over now if you look up travel stuff. People have capsule wardrobes, where you just have some basic pieces that can kind of go together.
Oh, I was thinking pills.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, just like a really pared down wardrobe where things go together. So, concentrate on neutral colors. And I kind of tend to go black, gray, and shades of blue or green. And that's
Yeah.
it. And I just bring those things, and nobody cares.
No.
You kind of plan these travel outfits thinking, oh, you're going to be taking pictures
Have
and
to look super
you
cute.
have to look different every evening you go out for dinner. Nobody really notices.
No.
It's fine.
And having maybe 2 different jumpers or pullovers that can kind of change.
Yeah.
It's really pretty simple.
And I've also discovered wool t-shirts, like any wool clothing. It doesn't have to be washed as often, and
Yeah.
it rolls up really small. So look for that kind of stuff. And also the other thing is just one really good pair of shoes,
Yeah.
good walking shoes.
I'll actually use some of my space to have a second pair of shoes because we have a little saying of we want to confuse our feet.
Yeah, that's what I taught you when
I know.
we
It was
spent
so
a day
good.
at a
Amusement park.
and where you walk forever and stand in lines and your feet get tired.
Oh, it was
And your
bad.
feet really hurt that
Yeah.
first day. And I said, you have to wear a different pair of shoes tomorrow because you have to confuse your feet and they'll feel better.
And I thought you were just spouting nonsense, but it worked because it's just a slightly different feel on your feet.
Yeah.
And so all the cobblestones.
2 pairs of shoes.
2 pairs of
Yeah,
shoes.
that's it. Wool clothes, 3 colors.
I'm a big fan of alpaca socks right now
Yeah.
because of the
And they don't
antibacterial.
stink.
They don't stink. They feel good. So that's great. And then the last thing is know what you can take through security. There's been some news recently of some men getting caught in a country where they had their backpacks and they had bullets in their backpacks.
Well, we're not packing bullets.
No, but
I did
but-
hear that news story.
but
That was
it's-
crazy.
I think it's a little connection that
Yeah.
you need to know what's in there.
Well,
and-
no, it's in there. But that's the thing with going carry-on is because, when we used to bring a suitcase, you could bring souvenirs home, like, say, a bottle of wine from
Yes.
Australia.
Or peanut butter to friends in Europe.
Yeah, so that was an accident when we were we were traveling with carry-ons. We were trying to bring a very precious jar of peanut butter to friends in Europe because they don't sell it quite like the American peanut butter there. And
Yeah, it's just not as
we-
much sugar in the peanut butter.
well, and just not the quantity
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
price. Yeah, so that got dumped into the garbage can by TSA because it didn't. It was
Yeah.
what do you call it? It's not liquid. It's
No, I
It's just
think
not
it was
allowed.
just that TSA agent. They have a hard job and they were in a bad mood.
well, it also was prohibited.
Well, there's that too. So those pack light, kind of try to figure out the conundrum of what's the smallest suitcase that you can do.
Yeah.
And
Well, and we're only 2 in, and we got a ways to go. So I hope you're still enjoying these. So our third one, and this is really important when you travel internationally, is learning how to fight jet lag.
yes.
So you gotta play the game with jet lag so that you're not ruining the first couple days of your trip.
Yeah.
Because we often travel to places that are 8 hours different or something like that or more. And it can be your body clock is all messed up and you feel really loopy the first day. And I think a lot of people do some things they think are helpful that work against them. So our first tips, and you've kind of perfected your routine for the plane itself. But
Yes.
our top tips for being on the plane, because you've got to get your rest on a long flight,
That's right.
are
It's so the first thing is noise canceling headphones. It's been a game changer, and it's not just because of crying babies, but that does help.
yes.
Because I think I figured that out. We were on a plane, and this child was able to scream and cry. It started out as just an upset cry, and then it got to be a mad cry, and it lasted 7 hours, I think.
It got beyond what we thought was a human ability
Yeah.
of endurance.
Impressive and also overwhelming and stress
And also
producing.
stressful for everybody around them. So you, I think, were the only one that was carrying noise canceling headphones at the time, and we all bought them after that trip.
Yeah, and it's not only for that, but also the white noise. When you actually wear them on a plane, you realize how much white noise is and how it jangles your nerves. And so part of navigating that is not having a for 10 hours. It
Yeah.
can be really helpful.
Yeah, so put those on. Comfortable clothes, of course, that are not binding. If you're on a long flight, you don't want to have blood clots or anything. Compression socks.
Yeah.
We're just starting to get into at our age.
Yeah. And there's a new one. Can we use brand names?
And why not?
So Bombas has a compression sock that's really wonderful. And then the next thing is minimize the alcohol intake.
Yeah, because it's fun to be on an international flight where they serve you dinner and then they ask you what wine you want at least twice. And it's nice, but it really does not help with jet lag. It dehydrates you and it interrupts your sleep, actually. So we would really recommend minimizing that. We usually have one glass of wine with our dinner and then go to water, or I even bring my own tea bags with chamomile tea or something natural to make me sleepy.
Water additives like
the instant hydration powders.
And that can help. But staying hydrated really does battle
that's
jet
huge.
lag a lot.
And I know it's kind of a catch-22 because you don't want to get up often and have to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
But the hydration makes a big difference in how you feel when you land.
This one's a little more controversial, but minimize the sleep aids as much as you do the alcohol. So taking sleep aids really make you groggy and doesn't help with the jet lag because your body timing gets off.
Yeah. So we just prefer not to do even melatonin. I mean, everybody's different what they need for their normal sleep when they're not traveling. But if you can avoid that, I think it's better in the long run. And then when you arrive, so that's just on the plane. But then when you arrive, a lot of people make the mistake. You get there and you're so tired from all that travel. People tend to get to the hotel and want to take a nap before they go explore. Don't do that.
No. If you're going to do anything in the hotel, take a shower to kind of refresh and revive, and then take a hike.
Walk.
Walk.
We dump our suitcases and then just walk and keep hydrating and try to stay on the local time with the sun, So after we try to stay up until at least 9 o'clock at night, and then hopefully you sleep okay that first night. And when you wake up, don't get up and start walking around town.
No.
Or looking at your phone or turning on the TV. Try to keep the light off to keep your brain kind of in that mode of you should be sleeping.
Yeah, you can get in trouble wandering the cities at night. So I've had a few of those and learn from my mistakes. It was an interesting time in Beijing walking through the Olympic Village at 4 a.m.
Not recommended.
No, I had some people following me, and maybe they would have anyway, but it was exciting. The last flight thing. Is time your flight. I know we always look for the cheapest airline flight, but if you time it right, so like when I fly to Europe, trying to leave here around 4 p.m. Is really helpful because then you get in the morning or late morning, you work through the day, and then you can kind of reset easier. So timing of your flight too, that you're flying over a time of sleeping. And I have an ability to sleep on planes that's not normal.
Yeah, that is a gift.
So
yeah,
helps.
You eat your dinner, watch one movie, and then you close your eyes and you sleep for the rest of the flight.
I know. People complain about
gift.
flights, and I'm like, what better place? People bring you food, bring you drinks, you watch videos. There's no technology that can reach you, and you sleep. It's a perfect vacation.
And we do kind of look forward to it sometimes when we fly together, just that we'll have an uninterrupted time of 10 hours just
Yeah.
sitting next to
Side
each
by
other.
side.
Yeah. So try to think of it in a positive way. Okay, so our fourth tip, and this one is a really important one, is to meet the basic needs. So this is when you are maybe traveling through a city with your family, especially with a big group. Have a plan for meeting your basic needs.
Yeah.
So basic information from the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Adrenaline.
No.
Oh, no. That's one of yours, though.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's not
It's
Maslow.
not basic, though.
No, no, no.
The first things that, of course, our bodies need are food, water, basic temperature control, so
Yeah.
shelter, and air to breathe. So if you can control your meal, if you can plan for your meals, your day's going to go much better. We
Yeah.
have learned that the hard way.
Well, yeah, because we would be having a great time hiking around, say, Rome, and it's a little hot, and we're like, by the time you start asking, hey, is anybody hungry? You're probably
You're
in
already
trouble.
too late.
Yeah.
And then you have a group of people all trying to decide what kind of food they want and how far they want to go to get it. And then things unravel really fast.
Yeah, your ability to tolerate stress decreases exponentially as your hunger increases.
Yes.
And we had some really, I'm telling you, I'm looking for a restaurant. Like there's some anger goes
Oh,
on.
that was
and,
scary right
yeah.
there.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. But you can see if you don't take care of the basics, it cascades.
Right. So it can
on
sound
you.
fun and spontaneous to say, oh, let's just find a place that when we're wandering by. Well, sometimes that doesn't work out so well. And sometimes it does. You can always change your plan
Yeah.
if you happen upon something that seems to be a good fit and everybody agrees. But when you get to that moment where you need to find something and you need to find it soon, it's better to have already mapped out a couple of places and you just say, this is where we're going for lunch. Tends to work out better. Feed everybody, and then it's easier to make decisions after that.
Yeah, and if you're staying at a hotel, the concierge can help you or the front staff can help you make reservations because we've done that. We've been in places where not everybody speaks English and having...
Although we have had kind of a funny story. That just reminds me too of in Italy when we went with your parents.
Yeah.
David's parents were really kind to kind of help sponsor us, our whole family, on a trip to Italy. And they asked for a recommendation from the hotel.
Yeah.
And we found out later that the hotel or the restaurant they sent us to was owned by their
Family
cousins
member.
or family
Yeah,
member, and
yeah.
it was all game meat, and we just I remember watching one man eat alone and drink an entire bottle of wine by
Chianti,
himself.
yeah.
Like one of those big fat ones with the raffia on it.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah, and I think it was probably not the best recommendation for our family with kids.
No.
But yes, have a plan.
Yeah.
And it is
get
good
help.
to get local recommendations.
Yeah, and not only recommendations, but they can make reservations for you. That's helpful to speak the language. So have a plan. Water can be more expensive than beer.
Yeah, so you have to stay hydrated. But we have found in a lot of countries, like Americans tend to drink more water, bring water bottles, have water just given to them on the table at a restaurant. That's not common everywhere you go.
No.
So just keep that in mind sometimes if you do go out, that water's not necessarily free.
Nope. And there can be other beverages that are less expensive and more culturally relevant.
Yes.
So we encourage you to try some different things.
Yeah. So a couple of times when we've been traveling, we've found we've needed to have places to take shelter. If you're walking all day in a city, and you don't have a hotel to go back to, which we've been in transition sometimes like that, you need to find a place to just take a break. And sometimes actually that's been a time we've discovered. Actually, I just remembered when we were in Vienna once and it was raining and the things we'd planned to do were outside and it wasn't fun anymore. We were all wet and cold.
Yeah.
And we ducked into an art museum and just had an amazing time.
That was a really good time.
Yeah.
And then the time in Poland and Krakow, it was wintertime, and we arrived after a very intense trip. We took a train to Auschwitz and toured and then headed down.
We had just been to Auschwitz, so we were feeling very
emotional.
Yeah.
And
it was very cold, and we were walking around the city, and it was drizzly and we just couldn't handle. And it was Christmas time, so there were festivities and markets, and it was contrasting the way we were feeling after Auschwitz. So we changed our plan then to and found a movie theater that was
Yeah.
showing the Queen movie. What was
Yeah.
it? The
Bohemian
Bohemian
Rhapsody.
Rhapsody. And they had English subtitles.
Yeah,
So
but it was in
it
Polish.
was warm in there, and we got
Yeah.
to sit in there for 2
It was a
hours.
really cool movie house too, because it was like an art movie house, an Art
Yeah, so that
Deco,
was a discovery.
and we got warm.
Right. So sometimes you just need to ditch your plan and get warm, get fed, get hydrated. And just another thing that sometimes not every country can do this. We usually like small local places, but we found in Europe, sometimes if we're having a day like that and we don't know where we're going next, we need to regroup, or we're too hot, or we're too
Yeah.
cold.
Find something
We find
familiar.
a Starbucks, and
Yeah.
that's not always our go-to, but they have bathrooms, they have, beverages, and they let you just sit at a table for a while.
Yeah.
So that's a good go-to when you need a break.
That is. So why don't we move from international to domestic travel? So we've spent a lot of time out of the country. Let's talk about long car rides.
Well, and this is international too. One of our top tips for any kind of travel is take a road trip. And we've done that a lot in the US, but we've also driven around in other countries. So
Oh yeah, that's
we
right.
have quite a few stories along with taking a road trip. A lot of people really dread having to be cooped up in a car for a long road trip, but we really enjoyed road trips with our kids.
Yeah, we would go 19 hours and drive from here to Colorado, and people thought we were a little nuts with young kids
Well, we were
in the
going
van.
from here to Buena Vista, Colorado to visit my parents, and that was at least once a year for quite a few years. And so we'd pile all four of our kids into the minivan,
That's right.
summer, winter, whatever. Actually, we had quite a few mishaps in the winter where we'd slide off the roads or
Yeah, the highways was shut down, and so we had a automatic hotel stop.
just accidentally, unexpectedly stay in a hotel in somewhere in Iowa or something. So we enjoyed those, but we had kind of a way of doing it that was very efficient.
Yes, I love this because some people like to meander on road trips. We road trip with purpose.
Yeah, and we're not saying this is the best way to do it. We're just saying this is how we did it.
Yeah, because we've tried to meander and nobody in our family likes that. So when we go, we drive until it's about time to get some gas.
It's usually about 4 hours.
Yep, about 4 hours. That's right. And then we decide it's time to make a stop, and we do four things. Four things?
No, really. Well, so we get gas for the car.
Yep,
At the same time, somebody's running into a restaurant to get food,
yep,
and everybody can pile out and use the bathroom.
yeah.
And then we're getting back in the car. And you were usually, you wanted it well under 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was
for
like
all those things.
we were like a race pit crew
Yeah, it
of
was pit
like,
stop.
let's go. And stretching. That was the fourth one. We would
Yeah,
stretch
get out
a
and
little
run them
bit.
around.
Yeah, run them
And
around.
when we had the dog, we'd have to find a grassy spot and let her run around too.
And we would remind everybody, this is our one stop for 4 hours, so you better stretch, input, output, and then we're going to hit the road again.
Yeah. So probably not everybody's favorite way, but we went fast. We went, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the message there is find your ritual, because just like any other thing, the kids all knew what the ritual was when we stopped. And so there was this process that was known, and find what fits your family. That one fits our family because we were always looking to make the best time. I was like, how are we going to do this? And we would change drivers too. There would be.
Yeah, we traded off, and we had our favorite stretches that I would do the early one because it was still dark. And
Yep. And
yeah.
I can't see in the dark all that well. So
yeah, and we just think, a road trip is such a great way to get an idea of the place.
Yeah.
You just see the landscape changing over time, the topography and
yeah, isn't that weird how like the topography changes when you cross state lines?
Yeah.
I mean, I just am fascinated
yeah,
by
it's weird
that.
because there's no line, there's an invisible line, but you could tell that state lines are probably drawn with topography because often there's a river. So on one side of the river, the landscape looks different. On the other side, it's
Yeah.
changed from hilly to
Rolling.
flat or
Yeah, or cornfields to mountains. And yeah, so if you're on a road trip, just notice that if the topography changes, you're probably in a different state. And hopefully it's the one you're going to, because occasionally you can get lost.
yes. So yes, one time on our, I think we've told this story before, but if you haven't heard it, we were driving to Colorado one time and it was David's turn to drive. I took a nap, and when I woke up, I saw "Welcome to Missouri," and Missouri was not on the route.
No, that was not a direct point from A to B.
Yeah, so routes changed, and that leads to kind of another part of our road trip tips is get familiar with real maps
Yes.
too, because GPS is a great tool now that we all have, but it doesn't. Number one, you don't always have connectivity.
No.
So if you're relying completely on GPS and your connection goes out, you're completely lost.
Yeah.
With no hope. And that's a really scary feeling.
Yes, and especially some stretches in the West, you won't see anybody for a long time.
Yeah, and it's a good skill to just get used to how to use a map and how to know where you are.
Yeah, I love the one thing we would do. We would mark our stops. So it was kind of like a road rally map for us of, oh, here was a restaurant we liked. Here's a gas station we would like.
Yeah.
And we'd
So
pace it
before
out.
this was in the days before we had GPS.
Yeah.
And we would take that road trip to Colorado and we'd have whoever wasn't driving would have the big Rand McNally map open on their lap and we'd be circling the exit numbers of places that had all the things we like, the fast food restaurants that we liked the most or whatever, or an attraction the kids could see. Because we did, even though we were kind of hard driving for the drive, we did plan our overnight stop on the way at a place that had something fun for the kids to do. So there was always the anticipation of, okay, a few more hours and we're going to get to swim in the pool or we're going to get to go see Fort Cody where there's
two-headed goat.
Yeah,
That
some
was always
weird like
fascinating.
supply store.
Yeah. So getting lost, be careful about GPS. And we have some stories in the Europe that we
That have to do with
lost.
GPS and its failures. So sometimes you follow GPS and it tells you that you're on a good route and you end up on a goat path in a car.
Or a hiker path.
A hiker path where you realize it's pedestrians and they're all looking at you funny.
Because you're driving up a mountain and they're like, what are you doing?
And you have to back your car down.
Oh, yeah. And you smile because we're Americans and they're looking at you like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And there's these crazy people in a car driving on a path, smiling and waving.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that was in Romania.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, boy. And then yours was in Italy.
Yes. When our daughter was studying abroad in Italy, we had the absolute joy of going to visit her. Because if your kids study abroad, that's a great excuse to have a passport and go visit them.
Yeah.
And she was in Italy, and so we took all the family, a lot of family, and went to visit her. So we had 2 cars because we had a lot of people.
Yeah.
And David was the driver of one car. I was the driver of another car on this particular outing. And we tend to be a little competitive. So
we like to race.
We were leaving wherever we had visited and going back to our Airbnb.
And rather than normal human beings of following each other.
Well, I thought we were following each other at first. And then my phone gave apparently a different route because you took a turn and I kept going straight. And I was following my route with a carload of our precious family. And the road started getting a little smaller and a dirt turned into a dirt track. And then ahead of us were rocks that didn't look like our rental car should be going over. And we were starting to freak out, but there was not really a way to turn around. And then we ended up on this narrow track with a kind of a cliff on one side of us and a car was coming the opposite direction and we had to he squeezed past us and I'm envisioning the mirror getting knocked off our rental car and we made it past each other, but the road got so small that it can't have been a road anymore. It wasn't passable. And we had to admit that we were really, really off. And I don't even remember how we turned around, but we had to go back to where we had left you and you,
and
I think we couldn't call. I forget.
No.
You guys were courteous and didn't ask too many questions.
No,
we got home so much later than you.
Well, and we were having fun because we were in a Cupra and we were on a mountain road and my dad loves to go fast. And so he was just like, oh, take these mountain curves as fast as you can. And the car would just settle out. So we were driving in a kind of tour.
So you were having too much fun to worry about us.
Yeah,
Well,
and
that's
we
good.
by the time we got back to the Airbnb though, we were like, "Hey, where's Tara and the kids?" And we
Took us
all
a while, but we got there, and you didn't shame us too much.
no, no.
I did have another time too. Well, this was you when we were in Australia. We took our family to Australia to see my grandparents.
Yeah.
At my grandmother's 90th birthday.
Mhm.
And in Australia, there's a lot of road rules that aren't posted that you have to figure out. And my aunt and uncle tried to help us know that if we were going a certain route, you have to pay your tolls online before you drive on the roads. And
Yeah, and they're horrible because they have cameras. There's not any police
right,
anywhere. It's
police
all
don't pull you
videos.
over if you're speeding. There's just cameras that send you a ticket in the mail if you're speeding.
Yeah.
And we just had a big van with our family in it, and David was driving, and we drove safely. We got everywhere we were going.
Yeah.
But weeks after we got home, the rental car was in my name, but David drove the whole time. I just want that on the record. Australia,
Yes.
because a speeding ticket arrived in the mail weeks after we arrived home.
I don't think the conversion was right from miles per hour to kilometers per hour. So
Yeah.
but we
Yes.
got a ticket.
We got a ticket, and we decided to pretend it never came.
Yeah. So Tara's no longer allowed in Australia. But
Yeah. So it's hard to kind of figure out road rules. Sometimes David has driven in quite a few countries now, and we got to drive across country in the Netherlands once where you felt so connected.
oh, that was really special because we drove over Afsluitdijk, the dike across the North Sea, and it was just really amazing because driving the land where you come from, this sounds weird, but it felt like home. There's almost a genetic connection to the earth, the terroir, that was remarkable because driving there and then getting out and exploring, and we would just take little back roads, and it was like, oh, this is where I'm from.
Yeah.
Which was a strange experience, but it's because we took road trips. We decided to kind of stretch out from what our plan was to.
Yeah. And it's different than just being in the high tourist areas.
And you felt the same way in Australia.
I did. Yeah. With my family heritage there too. There's just when we were driving across, the eastern coast there, I just felt tingles like I'd been there before and like I belonged there. It's a strange thing.
It's more than familiarity. There's got to be some epigenetic type of thing. How we pass genes across generations. I think there's a connection to the land
To place
that gets passed along.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Get close to the earth, see things that are beyond the tourist places.
All right, babe, I like this one. Go high, go low. Like you, this is how we tackle people, you and I, right? Go high, go low.
Right, you go high, I'll go low. Yeah, so one of our favorite things to do anywhere we go, I don't know if we ever planned this, it's just what we gravitate towards. Go see the highest places so you get a view of like everything, a high bird's eye view. You get a sense of, the routes and what's around you,
Yeah.
and then also
And then-
go underground.
Yes, to see what has been there in the past.
Right.
And where all the bodies are buried.
Literally.
Literally. And I love that. So some high places that you went to that kind of really stirred your soul.
Stirred my soul. Well, I was thinking more of ones that were memorable because they were scary, kind of like rickety, like getting up there. Like I remember distinctly going up St. Peter's Basilica.
Oh yeah, in the Vatican.
In the Vatican, and you can climb all the way up to above the dome, and all the little stairways in there are so narrow and so winding, and some people are going up, some people are going down. You're in these dark and closed spaces. Not OSHA approved. So that was really memorable, taking our kids up there.
Well, and do you remember, it's like there's an inner dome and an outer dome that's maybe as wide as my shoulders. And so you're in between the inner and outer dome. And when people come towards you, you make friends.
You get real
close.
Real close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any city we've gone to, if there's a, church tower to be climbed, we climb it.
Yeah. And it's
Bell tower,
it's a great way to combat jet lag because you're getting your steps in, but it's amazing. Like Pisa, the Tower of Pisa felt like a fun house because sometimes the stairs were steep and the others it was like walking flat on
Oh
stairs.
yeah, because when you go up the Tower of Pisa, you go
Circle.
around and around, and you feel a little you feel dizzy because you're a little off kilter. It's obviously.
Tilted.
Yeah. So
It's leaning.
so
I
it's
think it's
leaning,
leaning. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's a very strange feeling in there. But I think that goes with one of our pillar things we talk about a lot is just getting perspective.
Yeah.
And going high, you get this perspective of the place you're in,
Mhm.
and
And
uh,
you see that in places, the architecture is beautiful up high that you can't see from the ground. I think about St. Vitus Cathedral and just the Baroque. Is it Baroque? No. What's the flying buttress? What style is that?
Gothic.
Gothic. That's right. And you can see it in a very different way. So that
Hmm.
perspective is
It's
beautiful.
amazing. The views are amazing, and mountains too. I think when we took that Scotland trip, we climbed up St. Arthur's Seat. So any place you can just see across the countryside or the city.
I think I took a nap on that day. And
Yeah, well,
it's okay. You don't always have to go
you
to all the
don't
high places.
always have to. It's not for everyone. I know a lot of people who have a fear of tight places.
Yeah.
You'd think that going high would be more about the big open view, but actually,
Nope.
to get to the high places usually involves going up some very tight spiral stairways
Yeah.
inside dark uh, towers and
And rickety
hallways,
wood.
and yeah, very rickety, strange,
Yeah.
yeah, ways of getting there. So it's not for everybody, and
No,
that's okay.
and when we travel as a family, there's no shame. People can make choices not to go or to go
Yeah, when we
and
did that Tower of Pisa, it wasn't up your mom's alley, so
no.
she sat down, and we have the funniest pictures of trying to find her down below, and she was just this little speck
Yeah.
holding everybody's jacket. Somebody's got to hold all the stuff.
Yeah. And I think she was having a cappuccino.
I think she did find a place for a nice cappuccino.
So
Yeah.
I don't think she suffered.
No, and then so the opposite, we love to go deep too. I prefer the high places, but
Yeah. I
it's
like the deep, dark, dank places.
yeah, and there's a lot of them in a lot of places we've been to. The catacombs under
Love that.
churches, the crypts, those are creepy and kind of cool.
Yeah, and you can see the history of who's been there for a long, long
Yeah,
time.
often if you go deep enough, you're seeing ruins from other civilizations under the cities, and that's really
Yeah,
cool.
a lot of places we've gone, you get down to the Roman times, so
Hmm.
first century, seeing the Roman ruins, whether it's under Notre Dame or Notre Dame,
Notre Dame.
or looking at salt
Well,
mines.
that's another cool thing, completely different, was in Romania. Our friend took us to the salt mines
Yeah, what was that? That was
in
like a
Turda.
Turda. That's right.
And I never knew such a thing existed. It's astounding how deep you go. And
Yeah,
then there's just this, it's not like being in enclosed caves. It's this huge, huge vault of open space, but you're way low
yeah.
in the earth. And there's all these, I don't know, striations of the salt. In fact, I think one of our kids licked the walls because they're salty.
Yeah, I don't think they were supposed to do that.
No, I wouldn't
Can
recommend
you
it.
imagine how many people have licked that spot? Oh,
No.
that's not
Oh,
great. But
probably only our kid, actually.
yeah, people go there for medicinal purposes too,
Yes.
not just in Turda,
They
but
say it's
others.
healing. And there was a lake at the bottom. You could go in a boat
Yeah,
in the bottom of this salt mine. You're like stories and stories
yeah,
underground.
and I think some kids they had a kind
If
of
you have asthma, I
place to
think.
sleep and yeah, for asthma treatment, for
Yeah.
respiratory issues. But the thing that was hurtful about that was we took an elevator down and the family got on the elevator and then
And then you
you're
go.
you're laughing a little hard hit there, my friend. And then I got in and it goes beep beep beep. I'm like, ah, for the love. So it only had a certain amount of people and it's closed spaces. So
Yeah.
I stepped off the elevator and it wouldn't have been bad, but that's the second time in a second country that the elevator has said, hey,
Just
it's
because you were
too
the last
much.
one on.
Yeah. Well, in Hong Kong, it was just two. So I was with a friend. And you see people push everybody onto the elevator and go. So my friend and I, who are solid Americans, get in the elevator, and then everybody in Hong Kong was like, "No, we're good. We'll wait for the next one." And we're like, "What is happening?" So I have some elevator wounds.
Yeah. So high or low places often require stairs or elevators that might not be a comfortable
Yeah. And
ride for you.
know your reactivity, because we've seen people freak out in
That
both
is
places.
true. We have seen people have a complete like panic
Panic
attack
attack.
in some of those places. So know what feels okay for you. All right. So along those lines, our next tip, and it's the second to last one, is leave time to explore.
Yep.
So, whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, we like to usually plan at least one big thing a day. We tend to, in our life in general, tend to overdo things,
Yeah. Go hard.
overpack,
Yep.
overplan, well, I tend to overplan. I won't put that on you.
No, no.
But we have learned from experience, it's good to plan one big thing that you've decided you really want to see, like a must do, and then leave some flexible time for exploration.
Yeah. For accidental adventures.
Yeah, for discovery.
Yeah, and that's really worked well. And I think with that kind of leaving time, public transportation can be a fun thing in and of itself. So,
Hmm.
growing up in a little town in Western Michigan, I didn't know what public
Yeah.
transportation was and had never
You could
been.
ride your bike across the whole town.
Yeah, I didn't ever need to go anywhere but riding my bike, and maybe a car ride 45 minutes, which was like a super long way from home. And now, being on subways, I mean, in Budapest, the subway, the tile work, it's just gorgeous.
Hmm.
And same
In the
thing
metro in
in,
Paris, we had
yeah,
fun on, yeah, you getting to know the public transportation system. You feel more like a local.
yeah,
And we've learned just recently to ask locals which is the best pass to have. If you're in a place for longer than just a day or two, there's often a better pass that allows you unlimited trips for a certain amount of time. That's a much better financial
yeah.
deal.
And it's fun just to watch people. So when we were in Paris, I got to meet a guy who was reading a book with a monocle. I've never seen anybody with a monocle. And so it was interesting to
Yeah, and on London and the tube, we have to be the Americans going, "Ooh, mind the gap, mind
mind
the
the
gap."
gap. And that didn't get old real fast.
Well, yeah.
So there's lots of adventures, and it can be as simple as taking a bus and exploring, and even the touristy bus rides, like the one that's the hop on hop off, can be really nice because you get a sense of the city.
Well, and especially if you're traveling with older people in the group or people who just can't do the number of steps that is required to see everything on foot, it's nice to have that option of, taking a bus or a metro or something so
Okay,
that you can reduce the walking. What?
that's I'm just getting excited for the last one.
Oh, you are.
Because whenever we take public transportation, it's usually to explore where to find the best food.
Okay, so our last one, of course,
Is
we're going to end
food.
with our favorite, eat
Mm,
local food.
hmm.
We're always going to end with food
Yes.
and start.
And put some in the middle.
So, yeah, we always recommend wherever you travel to get into the local culture, talk to local people, eat the local food, even if it's not your favorite, sample it. There have been places we've traveled where the cuisine doesn't agree with us well or it's not our favorite, but always try things.
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? Well, I can tell there's probably a couple of stories I can tell you the worst that can happen. Um,
So, what are some of our food stories?
so I have a tender gut, I guess I would say that I have a tender disposition. And so traveling to India, I love spicy food. Like when I would work downtown Chicago, my friends from India would take me to the clay oven, and they would love it because it was dinner and a show. Because when I eat spicy food, I look like I'm having a heart
You
attack.
do.
I turn bright red.
And sweat pours off your head.
Oh, like a river. And so they thought that was hilarious. But when you're traveling internationally, that's not super great experience. And so I had a friend that I traveled to India with, and he would eat all the spicy
He
food
took
for
one for
me.
the team and ate the spicy food
Yeah.
for you, which is
And
very kind.
and then some of the mishaps also in China was eating scorpions and forgetting to take the stinger out.
Mm.
And that left my tongue a little numb. Or drinking wine that's been soaking inside a bottle with lizards and different
Yeah, I
reptiles.
don't know if I'd want to try that.
Well, you try it once, and probably the worst experience was eating, what is it called? Like a 100-year-old egg.
Yeah.
It's an egg that they bury for I don't know how long, not 100 years, but when you look at it, the white part is black and the yellow part is green. And I've never been so sick in my whole entire life. So for me, I love the adventure eating, but I also bring plenty of Imodium and Pepto.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a nice thought.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
there's something for you.
Yeah. When I lived in Japan for a summer, I learned that the word taco doesn't mean what we
Hey,
think it means in the
no,
US. It
it's not
means octopus.
oh,
And the thing that looks like a donut for breakfast is actually full of bean curd
oh,
paste.
I bet that surprised your
It did
palate.
surprise my palate. Um,
And they had you also would eat like,
oh, yes. The breakfast had shrimp that looked like they just jumped out of the oven. Not the oven, out of the ocean. They hadn't been cooked. So that was new for me in
yeah.
Japan. But it was fun to try all those things. We've also what we love to do any place we travel is to take a food tour
Oh,
or a
yeah.
cooking class if we
Hmm.
can. We've done that in several places, which gives us the opportunity. Usually the food tours are led by a local person who grew up in that town and knows places that are off the beaten track
Hmm.
and can introduce us to things the locals might eat. So that's been fun and has introduced us to things we wouldn't have ordered in a
Yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah.
A few of those things in Croatia. We ate cuttlefish ink risotto, which was
Mm,
black
yeah.
and makes your teeth black
Yep.
and tastes real fishy.
It was
But
special.
they loved it. They said it's just served at weddings. It's really special. So that was fun
Yeah,
to
my
try.
my favorite raw herring in the Netherlands. So you have a full herring fish with onions and pickles, and
Hmm.
I'm showing how you do
Yeah,
it,
you
but
hold it up in the air,
and you turn your head up and you just kind of eat it.
drop it into your mouth.
Oh, it's so good because it's a creamy,
Yeah,
lovely
I was really
texture.
scared to try that on the food tour, but I liked it more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Hey, how about that?
A better thing on that same food tour in Amsterdam was now the US sells stroop waffles more often. You see
Yep.
those little things that look like thin waffles that are from the Netherlands. But in Amsterdam, they're served warm,
Yeah,
like
sitting on
warm
top
and
of your
melty.
coffee.
Yeah,
Oh,
just out of the oven. That was pretty
so good.
amazing.
And then what I like is it's a kind of meat blended up and deep fried called,
Blended doesn't sound good.
well, it's ground up. I'm sorry, not blended, but it's bitterballen.
Yeah,
And it's
so that was a
just
special treat on a food tour we took where we got to eat these hot bitterballen on a canal boat.
with stone ground mustard. Oh,
Yeah.
so you're sitting on the canal having these little treats and enjoying the city.
And then another trip we took was to visit our son who studied abroad, and he studied in Sevilla. So we took a cooking class with him inside the food market, which is another cool thing to do is visit a market in any country, any city
Yeah.
you go to,
Yeah.
or small town, any place that they have a fresh market, fresh local market. You'll see a lot of interesting things. You'll taste a lot of interesting things. And in this cooking class, we learned to make paella conejo. Do
Ooh.
you remember what conejo is?
Conejo would be Bugs Bunny.
It was the rabbit.
Oh, is so
Yeah.
good.
So I would never have ordered paella with rabbit, but we had to prepare it. We
Yeah.
had to learn how to cut the meat off the bone, and then we ate it and it was delicious.
It was delicious.
It was so delicious that when we came home, we ordered rabbit from our local meat market and tried to make it ourselves. And we did an
Yeah.
all right job.
Yeah, it was tasty.
And we also made salmorejo, the cold soup.
Oh, yeah.
We've never tried to make that at home because we
No.
don't normally gravitate towards cold soups, but it was tasty when we had it.
Yeah, and I think the other place we love cooking classes. So I would say if you can find a cooking class, because when we were in Florence, we went into someone's home and she did a cooking
Oh, that
demonstration.
was like
Christina,
one of the most amazing days. We made
yeah,
pasta.
her basement had a wall that was 1,000 years old from when the Roman emperor, I forget his
I don't
name,
know the
was
story.
there, but it was olive oil from the neighbors, wine from the neighbors,
Basil
everything.
picked from her
Yeah,
garden. Yeah.
tomatoes, and it
There's
wasn't complicated cooking, but there
no.
was something so warm and inviting because she shared with us. So
Yeah. And there's
that's
nothing better than fresh, simple
yeah.
local food.
And I think all of these things, these recommendations are have some relational focus to it. So we hope this has been helpful to you.
Yeah. We hope you'll have fun with these things. And it's gotten us excited about our next trips.
Yeah, can't
So
wait.
we'd love to hear about your trips. So
Yeah, or
send us
tips, trips and tips.
trips and tips and mishaps.
Oh, especially the mishaps.